Hello, 8th grade remote students. Today we're going to be doing our last video for Romeo and Juliet, which is very exciting. The last video we did Act 5, Scene 1 and 2. I want to do a little review before we start. So in Scenes 1 and 2, before that, I should go back a little bit. Juliet has faked her death. Her family finds her, quote unquote, dead, and they hold a funeral for her. Remember, she took a potion that Friar Lawrence gave to her to escape the marriage to Paris. So she fakes her death. She drinks this potion, and then the Capulets find her in the morning, and they find her dead. They think she's dead. They hold a funeral for her. Balthazar, who is Romeo's servant, peeks in on the funeral and sees that Juliet is dead, not understanding that she has faked her death. And so then in scene 1 and 2, Balthazar, Romeo's servant, goes to see Romeo in Mantua and tells him the news of Juliet dying. And this all happens before the letter from Friar can get to Romeo. So Romeo has no idea that Juliet is not really dead and that she is faking her death. He decides to go to Verona to see Juliet, and on his way, he buys some poison to kill himself from a nearby apothecary. He convinces this apothecary to sell him this poison, even though poison is illegal in Mantua. Then in scene 2, Friar John was supposed to deliver a letter to Romeo about Juliet faking her death, but he couldn't make it there because of the plague, so Romeo thinks Juliet is actually dead. Friar Lawrence is on his way to stop Romeo from doing anything impulsive. So Friar Lawrence could have just delivered this letter himself. Instead, he entrusted somebody else to do this, which I feel like is a huge mistake. So right now, Friar Lawrence is on his way to Verona to stop Romeo, and Romeo is also on his way to Verona as well. And they are both on their way to go to the tomb, the Capulet tomb, where Juliet is currently lying. Remember that we know that Juliet is not really alive. She is faking her death. So we're going to start. This is Act 5, Scene 3. This is at the Capulet Mausoleum, or the tomb, which you can see in the picture. This is late Thursday night, Friday morning. The people in this scene are Friar Lawrence, Paris's page, who's a messenger, Romeo, Juliet, Balthazar, who's Romeo's servant, the prince. There are a bunch of watchmen, which are I kind of see them as like the police. They are kind of like security. There's a chief watchman who's like in charge. There's a watchman number 2 and a watchman number 3. And then we have Lord and Lady Capulet, which are Juliet's parents, and we have Lord Montague. Let's get started. So Paris is at the Capulet tomb right now, or the monument, and he is paying his respects to his would-be wife. Enter Count Paris and his page. He is with his servant, what they call a page. Give me thy torch, boy. Go hence, and stand aside, and put the torch out, for I would not be seen. Lay under yonder trees, holding thine ear close to the sacred ground, so no one shall set foot upon the churchyard without thou hearing it. Whistle then to me as signal that thou hearest something approach. Give me those flowers. Do as I bid thee. Go. So Paris is outside the Capulet monument, which you can see here, and he is about to visit Juliet, his would be wife. He tells his servant, wait out here, and I want you to whistle if anybody comes. Little does Paris know that multiple people are on their way to the tomb right now. Romeo is on his way to the tomb, and so is Friar. So Paris has his boy or his servant wait outside, and he says, whistle to me if you hear anything. Paris goes into the mausoleum or the tomb. To himself, the page says, I am almost afraid to stand alone here in the churchyard, yet I will do it. So he says, I'm kind of freaked out by this, but I'm going to do it. The page moves aside. So now he's inside this tomb, and these are some pictures of what it might look like. There's kind of some bodies here, and they're uncovered. They're not like underneath the ground or anything like that. Paris is inside the tomb, and he scatters flowers at Juliet's tomb. He says, sweet flower, I strew flowers at thy bridal bed, which I shall water each night, or failing that, I will honor thee nightly with tears. Sorry, my cats are fighting. Stop. Go away. Okay, sorry about that. So Paris is putting flowers all over Juliet's tomb right now, all over her body, and kind of just like grieving her loss. The page then whistles, so this means someone's coming. The boy gives warning, someone doth approach. What cursed foot wanders this way tonight to interrupt this ritual honoring my love? Paris looks out of the mausoleum door. Wait, someone with a torch. What? Someone with a torch. Hide me a while, night. Paris hides in the shadows. So who do we think is coming? Romeo is outside. Enter Romeo and Balthazar in the churchyard. Romeo says to his boy, or his servant Balthazar, give me that pickaxe and wrenching iron. Hold, take this letter early in the morning, deliver it to my father. Give me the light. So he says, give me the crowbar and pickaxe, and he's going to break down the door of the tomb. And he says to his servant, he says, take this letter. I wrote it for my father, and this is basically a suicide note of what he's going to do. Because remember, he has poison, so he's planning on killing himself tonight. And he says to his servant, give my father this letter, and it will explain everything that's happened. He says, whatever thou hearest or seest, stand yonder, and do not interrupt me. Hence be gone. But if thou dost return to pry in what I intend to do, by heaven, I will tear thee joint by joint and strew this churchyard with thy limbs. He threatens his own servant, Balthazar. And he says, if you hear anything or see anything, I want you to not interrupt me. I want you to not come into the tomb. And if you do, I will tear you joint by joint or limb by limb and throw your limbs across the churchyard. He has kind of lost his mind at this point. He is threatening his own servant at this point. So that's not good. So Balthazar is like, okay, dude, I will be gone, sir, and not trouble you. He says, do what you got to do. I will not trouble you. Romeo says, live and be well. Farewell, good fellow. So he is now going into the tomb. Balthazar to himself, he says, I'll hide me here. His looks I fear, and his intentions I doubt. He says, I'm scared of what he will do. Romeo is going into the tomb now. He says, loathsome mouth, I shall force thy rotten jaws to open and cram thee with more food. He's going into the tomb, opening the tomb door and going in to see Juliet now. Oops. Go away. Paris sees Romeo enter. Excuse me. Paris sees Romeo enter. Paris is already in the tomb, and this is not good because Paris and Romeo kind of like, they like the same woman. So they are going to get into a little battle here. Paris is aside to himself, he's hidden. He says, this is that arrogant, banished Montague that murdered my love's cousin, causing Juliet to die of grief. And here is come to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies. So Paris thinks that Romeo is there to do some harm to the dead bodies. He's not. He's there to say, to kill himself and be with his wife. But Paris thinks that Romeo is there to do something bad. Paris decides, I will apprehend him. I will go after him and attack him. Stop thy evil toil, vile Montague. Can vengeance go further than death? Condemned villain, I do apprehend them. I do apprehend thee. Obey and go with me, for thou must die. So Paris threatens Romeo and says, whatever you're doing, I'm going to fight you. Romeo says, I must indeed, and therefore I came hither. Good gentle youth, tempt not a desperate man. Put not another sin on my head by urging me to fury. Fly hence and leave me. I come hither armed against myself. Stay not and be gone. Live and hereafter say a madman's mercy bid thee run away. So he says, you should go away. Tempt not a desperate man. Don't make me commit another murder. He says, put not another sin on my head by urging me to fury. Don't make me mad. I'm already desperate. I'm going to kill you if you mess with me. He says, I'm here to kill myself, not you. And he gives Paris a fair warning. You should get out of here, he basically says. Do we think Paris is going to take this? No. Paris says, I deny thy pleading and apprehend thee for a felon. He says, no, I'm still going to fight you. Romeo says, wilt thou provoke me? Then have at thee. So Romeo just says, all right, then let's fight. Romeo and Paris then fight. Paris's page notices they're fighting and says, I will call the watch. I will call the police. Page runs off. Paris falls. So Paris is dying because Romeo just fought him and he won. Paris says, "Oh, I am slain or killed. If thou be merciful, open the tomb, lay me with Juliet." So his dying wish is to be laid with Juliet. So Romeo has now killed Paris. So I'm going to add this note. Romeo has now killed Paris. He warned him, but Paris did not take the warning, and he allowed himself to be killed anyway. Romeo says, "In faith I will. Let me see thy face. Mercutio's kinsman, noble county Paris. Balthazar did tell me Paris was to marry Juliet. Oh, give me thy hand. We are both written in misfortune's book. I'll bury thee in a proud grave." So Paris has now died at the hand of Romeo. Romeo now opens Juliet's part of the tomb. This is not a grave, but a lantern, for here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault full of light. So now he's looking at his Juliet. "Death, lie thou there, buried in a dead man by a dead man." Romeo lays Paris in Juliet's tomb. So Romeo has done the nice deed of laying Paris near Juliet. He says, "Oh, my love, my wife, death that has sucked the honey of breath hath had no power yet upon thy beauty." So he says to Juliet, he's looking at Juliet, and he is like, wow, like you can see a picture here. Wow, she is really still beautiful. We know that she is not actually dead, so she's going to like not look dead. He says that she is not pale, she's rosy. We know that she is faking her death and that she is just asleep. So this is ironic because death really hasn't taken away her beauty because she's actually not dead. Romeo then moves to Tybalt's tomb. He says, "Tybalt, liest thou there in thy bloody sheet? Oh, what greater favor can I do for thee than to use that hand that cut thee down to kill thine enemy? Forgive me, cousin." So he goes over to Tybalt's body and asks for forgiveness. Now he moves back to Juliet's tomb. He says, "Ah, dear Juliet, why art thou yet so fair? How are you still so pretty? Shall I believe that death is amorous, and that he keeps thee here in dark to be his lover? For fear of that, I shall stay with thee forever, and never depart from this palace of dim night again. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids." So he is just talking about how beautiful she is and how much he loves her and how she does not look dead at all. He's continuing here. He says, "Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest. Eyes look your last, arms take your last embrace, and lips seal with a righteous kiss." He kisses Juliet and then he takes out the poison. He says again to himself, "Here's to my love," and he drinks the poison. "O true apothecary, thy drugs are quick. Thus with a kiss I die." And Romeo now dies. You can see him taking the poison right over Juliet's body. We know she is about to wake up here. Right at this moment, the friar, let's see how long we have. Yep. Okay. Right at this moment, the friar arrives to the tomb, the Capulet tomb. He is outside and he's going to talk a little bit to Balthazar, who's Romeo's servant. They don't know what's gone on inside yet. "How oft tonight have my old feet stumbled at graves? Who's there?" Balthazar says, "A friend who knows you well." "Bliss be upon you. Tell me, good friend, whose torch is yonder that burneth in Capulet's monument?" So he's like, "Who's in the monument?" Balthazar says, "My master Romeo's." Friar says, "How long hath he been there?" Balthazar says, "Half an hour." Friar says, "Go with me to the vault." He says, "Please go with me into the vault. I'm afraid of what's going to happen." Balthazar, having been threatened by Romeo recently if he goes into the vault, says, "I dare not, sir. My master thinks I am gone and did threaten me with death if I did stay to look on his intents." So Balthazar is like, "No, I'm not going in there. Romeo um, threatened me if I go in there, so you're going to have to go alone." Friar says, "Stay then, I'll go alone. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some unlucky thing." So he thinks something bad has happened. And he is correct, because something bad has happened. Romeo and Paris are both dead. As he enters the tomb, he sees blood on the steps of the tomb. And he says, "Romeo sees the blood. Alack, what blood is this which stains the stony entrance of this tomb? What mean these masterless swords that lie by this place of peace?" So as he's entering the tomb, he sees lots of blood, and he also sees some swords lying before the tomb. And he is wondering what has happened. Friar now enters the tomb, and first he sees Romeo's body. Romeo, oh pale Romeo! Who else? What, Paris too, and steeped in blood? Ah, unkind hour! The lady stirs. So Friar walks into the tomb, and he sees not only Romeo dead, but he sees Paris dead as well. At the same moment, Juliet is waking up. Juliet says, "Oh, friar, where is my lord? I do remember well where I am. Where is my Romeo?" So she wakes up, and the first thing she asks for is for Romeo. We know that he is not alive anymore. She does not quite know this yet. The friar now tells her the news. "I hear some noise. Come away. Thy husband lies there dead, and Paris too. Come, I'll take thee to live among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question me, for the watch is coming. Come, good Juliet, I dare no longer stay." So the friar says, "Your husband has died, Romeo has died, and Paris too." And he says, "Our plan has been foiled, it's been ruined. It hasn't worked out well." His suggestion to Juliet, "I'll take thee to live among a sisterhood of nuns. I'll make you a nun." He says, "The watch is coming. We need to get out of here. The watchmen are coming. We got to get out of here." And he says, "I don't want to stay anymore because I need to get out of here so we don't get in trouble." Juliet says, "Go, get thee hence. I will not leave." So she refuses. And then the friar leaves for a second. Juliet is now alone, and she's sitting with Romeo's dead body. And she says, "What's here? A cup closed in my true love's hand? Poison, I see, hath been his timeless end. How selfish! Drunk all, and left no friendly drop to help me after. I will kiss thy lips, hopefully some poison, yet doth hang on them to make me die." She kisses him. Thy lips are warm. So she wakes up, she sees Romeo is dead next to her. She finds the cup of poison that's now empty, and she says, "Oh my goodness, he killed himself by poison. He didn't even leave me a drop to help me after to kill myself." She's now going to try to kiss his lips to hopefully get some poison to kill herself with. So she kisses him, and she realizes his lips are warm. So this means this just happened. From outside, the chief watch, this is the main like police officer, says, "Lead, boy, which way?" They're trying to figure out where these people are. Juliet says, "Noise, then I'll be brief." She snatches Romeo's dagger. "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath." She stabs herself with Romeo's dagger. "There, rust, and let me die." So she just stabbed herself. You can see it in this picture, and she dies on Romeo. The page from outside, this is one of the servants, says, "This is the place, there where the torch doth burn." The main police officer says, "The ground is bloody. Search about the churchyard. Go, some of you, whoever you find, arrest." So the servants and the chief watch and the other watchmen are trying to figure out what has happened here because they've got three dead bodies and they don't know what's going on. So exempt some of the watchmen, Chief Watch enters the mausoleum. So now the main police officer is going into the tomb. He enters and he says, "Pitiful sight, here lies the Count slain, and Juliet bleeding, warm and newly dead, who here hath lain this 2 days buried." So he says Juliet's bleeding and just died, but she's been dead and buried for 2 days already. So think about how weird this would be for some people because they've already gone to her funeral and now she's dead again. So very suspicious to other people. To other various members of the watch, the chief watch says, "Go tell the prince, run to the Capulets, raise up the Montagues, some others search, exempt some watchmen." So they're going to go get the families now. "We cannot figure out all these piteous woes without understanding the circumstances." So they are figuring out what has happened. Watch number 2 says, with Balthazar, "Here's Romeo's man. We found him in the churchyard." So they grab Balthazar because he's been here this whole time, so he looks a little suspicious. The watchman number 3 is with the friar. He says, "Here's a friar who trembles and weeps. We took this spade from him as he was coming from this churchyard side. Greatly suspicious, hold them both till the prince come hither." So these watchmen are holding on to Friar and Balthazar until the prince can come. Here comes the prince. Enter the prince with attendants. The prince says, "What misadventure has happened so early that calls us up from our rest?" So now the prince is here. And now Juliet's parents are here. Enter Capulet and Lady Capulet. "What is it that everyone so shrieks about?" So they're like, what is happening? Lady Capulet says, the people in the street cry Romeo, some Juliet, and some Paris, and all run crying toward our mausoleum. So all the people in Verona are freaking out. People have died. 3 people have died. Romeo, Juliet, and Paris have died. What horrors startle mine ears? Prince is asking, what is happening? The chief watch, the main police officer, says, here lies Count Paris slain, Romeo dead, and Juliet dead before, warm and newly killed. The prince says, search and discover how this foul murder came about. So the prince wants to know, how did this happen? Chief Watch answers him by saying, here is a friar and Romeo's man with tools on them to fit to open these dead men's tombs. So he is like, here's a friar, here is Balthazar, Romeo's man. They both have some tools on them to open a tomb, so we should question them. Capulet sees his daughter, newly dead, and says, oh, wife, look how our daughter bleeds. This dagger sheath is empty on Montague's back and is missheathed in my daughter's bosom. She's very upset. Now comes Lord Montague. This is Romeo's dad. The prince says, come, Montague, for thou art early up to see thy son and heir more early down. So he discovers that his son has died. He also reveals, alas, my wife is dead tonight. Grief of my son's exile hath stopped her breath. What further woe conspires against mine age? So he reveals that his wife, Lady Montague, has also died, and she has died of a broken heart. So at this point in the book, we have a number of people that have died. So if you're not keeping count, here are the people that we have. This is our death count, kind of. So we've got Mercutio, we've got Tybalt, we've got Romeo, Juliet, and now Paris also, and we've got Lady Montague. So we're up to 6 people having died from this one story. So those of you that thought this was a love story, not really. It is more of a tragedy. So the prince, after Montague reveals that his wife has died of a broken heart, the prince says, look and thou shalt see. Montague is very upset. He says, oh, what manners is in this, to go to a grave before thy father? How horrible of you to die before your father. The prince says, seal up thy outrage for a while until we can clear these confusions. Friar, say at once what thou dost know in this. So they ask the friar, what has happened here? So the friar goes on a long rant here. He spends a whole page explaining what happened. You can see it here. I'm not going to read it because it literally just tells the whole story of what happened throughout the book. So it tells of the plan, it tells of their marriage, it tells everything. So the friar tells the prince and everyone else what happened about the secret marriage, about the secret plan to escape the death, to escape the marriage, to Paris. It tells about everything. You can see it here. Balthazar then mentions, I brought my master news of Juliet's death, and then he came from Mantua to this place, to this mausoleum. This letter he bid me give his father. So Balthazar pulls out the letter that Romeo gave him. This is kind of the suicide note. And this letter was meant for Montague. The prince says, give me the letter, I will look on it. He reads the letter. This letter doth make good the friar's words, the story of love, the news of her death, and he did buy a poison from a poor apothecary and came to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. So the prince reads the letter. He says, this confirms what the friar said in this speech over here. So Romeo's letter confirms everything. The prince says, where be these enemies? Capulet, Montague, see what an evil is laid upon your hate, that heaven killed your joys or your children with love. So he kind of blames the Capulets and Montagues and says, if you didn't have this feud, this would have never happened. He ends by saying, I have lost a kinsman for looking the other way when you fought. All are punished. He is very upset about these losses. At the very end of the story, this is our last page here, Capulet says, O brother Montague, give me thy hand for my daughter's dowry, for no more can I demand. So basically, they are shaking hands right now. They are ending the feud. They are making, amends. Montague says, "But I can give thee more, for I will raise her statue in pure gold, so there will be no woman praised as highly as that of true and faithful Juliet." So Montague says, "I will shake your hand, we'll end this feud, but I will also create a statue of gold for your daughter." And Capulet answers by saying, "And Romeo shall have a statue beside his lady, poor victims of our hatred." So they understand that their feud has caused all of this and that their children are now dead because of their feud. The prince ends by saying, "This morning brings with it a sad peace. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to talk more of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned and some punished. For never was there a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." So they have died, the feud is over, and we are up to a death count of 6 at this point. So that is the end of the play. Now we're going to go back to our notes and we're going to take our final notes. So let's see. Paris is at the tomb mourning Juliet. Romeo arrives and fights Paris, and Paris dies. Romeo then poisons himself after seeing Juliet dead. Juliet then wakes up and notices her love is dead and stabs herself. Then the prince, oops, show all that. The prince and families come and see what happened. It is revealed that Lady Montague died of a broken heart. Romeo's exile. Fix my mistake here. At the end, the feud is resolved, and there will be statues built of Romeo and Juliet. Okay. So in our last scene, Paris was at the tomb mourning Juliet. Romeo arrives and fights Paris, and Paris dies. Romeo then poisons himself after seeing Juliet dead. Juliet then wakes up, notices her love is dead, stabs herself, and kills herself. Then the prince and the families come and they see what happened. It's revealed that Lady Montague also died of a broken heart from Romeo's exile. And at the end, the feud is resolved, and there will be statues built of Romeo and Juliet to honor them. Just to keep tabs, our death count now is up to 6, and we have finished. So we've got Mercutio, Tybalt, um, Paris, Romeo, Juliet, and Lady Montague. So that is the end of Romeo and Juliet. So please finish your notes, send them to me when you're done, and let me know if you have any questions. Also finish the Act 4 and 5 videos, and reach out if you need anything. Great work, and thanks for watching.